Zando Penguin Audio presents Great Disasters, a novel, by Grady Chambers, narrated by Zachary Chastain. Freshman. In those years, we lived like sisters. I almost wrote brothers. We were boys, but that doesn't feel accurate. We slept over. We shared clothes. We competed. We knew each other's bodies, as I imagined sisters did. I saw this movie once with a hidden garden in it. I remember a group of sisters, the deep green of the garden walls, the cream of the girls' dresses. I'm afraid this won't make sense, but somehow in memory it mixes together. My own childhood, the garden in the movie, the girls hidden inside it, so that they've become somehow us. We left our sweatshirts, our t-shirts, our basketball shorts on the floors of one another's rooms, so that years later I wore Caesar's baseball shirt, though I'd never even played, and Ryan wore David's graduation ring, though Ryan never managed to graduate. And when, as young men, we saw each other again, home for Thanksgiving, one of us might recognize another's jacket or another's bracelet and say, "Wasn't that mine once?" And none of us were really certain. This is the story of how we became. I write those words, but remain uncertain what they mean. We were friends as boys. Then suddenly it was high school. Planes crashed into the World Trade Center. Ryan and Jana fell in love. We never would have used that word back then, but from this distance, it is plain to me that there was love in what connected them. All these years later, and those two don't even speak, where once they sat beside each other on the bus each Sunday, riding it east through Chicago from Jana's parents' place, following Fullerton Avenue all the way to the lake. The rest of us lost touch with Ryan too, though somewhere in my apartment are things he once gave me. An American flag after he enlisted, a pair of silver cufflinks he asked me to hold for safekeeping long ago. I guess that's what this story is. Ryan's cufflinks in my drawer, when I haven't heard his voice for years. The summer before our freshman year of high school, Caesar and I spent 2 weeks at a hockey camp in upstate Michigan. We hated it there. Up before the sun for a run, the path a beaten dirt track that wound through the thick woods. It would still be dark when we started out. We were half asleep, our muscles moaning as we jostled through the forest, still exhausted from the day before. But there was a beauty to it, too. There was a quake we could hear in the green around us as we ran, everything that lived there just waking up. By night, our necks were raw pink, our feet aching from skating all day, and we ate dinner under the cafeteria's grim fluorescence, hunched over our lunch trays, too tired to speak. There was a goalie coach at the camp whatever, you know what I mean, Caesar made friends with, a 28-year-old from Romania who hated it there even more than we did. The last night of camp, he barged into our room with 5 Heinekens and an extra-large bag of Lay's potato chips. I finished my first beer before Caesar finished his, so the coach and I each got 2, while Caesar only got 1. We were 14 years old, and it wasn't the first time drinking for Caesar or me, but it was the first time we admitted to the other that we drank. I guess you'll need to know that there were 7 of us. Me, Caesar, Ryan, Ben, Neil, Ricky, David. That's a lot of names to remember, but you can mostly forget about Ricky. He seemed to materialize whenever we were drinking, get drunk quicker than any of us, then completely disappear, toppled over in the flower beds or discovered the next morning passed out on someone's parents' basement floor. We'd pass him in the rush of the school hallway on Monday morning as he disappeared into the crowd, then find him beside us the following weekend, opening up another beer. When Caesar and I got back from hockey camp, high school began. You know what that's like. But drinking came back with us, and suddenly there was this excitement in our life. We drifted from class to class. We made bridges out of toothpicks. We mapped the constellations onto a huge black tarp in science class, then turned it into a tent and lay beneath it. We fell asleep in assembly, or at least Ryan always did. I sat beside him, entranced as I watched the girl in front of me trace shapes with her finger along the neck and shoulders of the girl who sat beside her. What it was that lulled me, I didn't know. Maybe how gentle that gesture was, or maybe how it seemed impossible back then that I would ever be close enough with someone that they might let me touch them like that. Fridays emerged through that haze like some beacon out at sea, growing brighter through the diminishing week. The bell tolled through the school at 3:30, and by 3:33, Caesar, Ryan, and I were already in the lobby. David always skipped off as soon as school ended to go to his mandolin lesson. Ben we called Club Kid, because we couldn't keep up with all the after-school organizations he'd signed up for. The Sierra Club and Young Democrats and whatever other names kids give to the ways they want to save the world. Ben had a good heart. He was kind through and through. As we zipped our backpacks, he'd appear out of the mass of people with his loping walk and rounded shoulders, his stiff thatch of brown hair jutting from his head like a shrub. "Hey, Greenpeace!" Ryan would yell. Or, "Hey, save the zebras!" he'd shout at Ben across the lobby. "Yo, Ben! Yo, Mahatma! Yo, Mother Teresa, call us when you're done!" he'd cry, laughing and waving his baseball cap at Ben's departing back. But for all the shit Ryan gave him, Ryan was the one to cheer for him the loudest whenever one of Ben's clubs was presenting at assembly. Ryan, as you might have guessed, was beautiful. Tall, tan, trim, with the whisper of a cleft lip that made it look like he was always just about to sneer or smile. He could do that whistle where you stick your pinkies in your mouth and the sound shoots out like a rocket. When Ben walked on stage, Ryan would lift himself to perch on his seatback, his feet digging down into the cushion, his wolf whistle piercing the air so sharply every kid in there turned around to see who did it. Each Friday by early evening, David and Ben would arrive at Ryan's. Caesar and I would already be there, and Ryan's parents would be at the television, transfixed by the footage of the crashing planes, the brand new war, the names of Afghan provinces suddenly on everyone's lips like they were places they'd been familiar with for years. We'd slip out the back door and prowl the block near Big Lake Liquors until we convinced a stranger to buy us beer. It was easier than you'd think. We picked guys who looked like they'd just finished college. Most told us to fuck off, but 1 in 10 would shrug and get us what we asked for. There was a steel yard about a mile west of Ryan's house. It was strangely unprotected and beautiful in this way I'd only seen before in movies. There's this French one called Graduate First, where these teenage kids drift around some dead-end rural town. They drink too much. They party in abandoned houses. Someone sleeps with someone they shouldn't. Someone gets beat up. It seemed like it was always winter in that movie, and I'd think of it as we slipped under the chain link into the grounds of the steel yard. We were on the west side of the city, so you could see clear across Chicago, the brown brick shoulders of the factories leading like steps to the skyscrapers that shined in the distance. The steel yard held huge tubes of steel sheeting, laid out in long, straight rows, like submarines, waiting to be sent out to sea. We'd sit in the windbreak made by the tubes, their curved sides curved against our spines, and spend all night making plans we knew would never happen. Ryan had heard from Jana that people were going to Ashley's. Ben had heard from Ricky that a girl from St. Ignatius had keys to a cousin's empty house in Schaumburg, but that was in the suburbs, and how the hell were we going to get out there? The plans we spoke of were always just a car ride or a party out of reach, and the truth is I didn't want any of those plans to happen anyway, even if they could. I was shy, though I was always trying to be as brash as Ryan was. And though I kept it a secret, I would sit there wondering what could be better than being exactly where we were, the 6 of us huddled together on the cold earth, out of the wind and drinking, imagining the versions of ourselves we thought we wanted to be, but not yet having to be them. I'm going to go back in time for a moment. From somewhere else, all our parents arrived in Chicago, and except for Caesar, his birth name was Eduardo, but as a kid, liked Little Caesar's Pizza so much the name just stuck. It's the place where each of us was born. The city runs for 22 miles along the coast of Lake Michigan, and then the coast keeps going, leaving the city behind. To the east, the lake looms like an ocean. Most people outside the Midwest don't entirely understand how huge that lake is. In winter, the waves roll in like ships and pile against the shore, The water freezes.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?